Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar from MBS. It's on mechanical and electrical products. If you're a manufacturer of those, what we're going to be discussing today is the specification process and how you can get specified. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. Everybody's microphones are muted. All questions will be recorded. If you want to add any of those into the chat, we'll follow those up individually afterwards. And ultimately, if you'd like to find out more about what MBS do, you can visit the mbs.com or email info@thembs.com. One of the team would be happy to chat to you. So my name's Lee Jones. I'm the head of manufacturer solutions at MBS. I work in a variety of different capacities for the company, from production, product development, marketing, sales, currently looking after the sustainability side of the business as well. But historically, my background is as a mechanical engineer. I moved over to the architectural side sort of later in my career, but what that does enable me to do is have a bit of a vision over both sides of the fence. So hopefully what I'm going to be discussing today, you'll find useful. Yeah, here we go. So just a little bit of an intro on who MBS are. So MBS, most people will know as being associated with the RIBA, but MBS is now part of the defacto group. defacto are a Nordic technology company with similar businesses to MBS around Europe, but also in Asia, Australia, Canada, and the US. So very, very broad global reach. MBS became a subsidiary of defacto at the beginning of this year, alongside Glenigan as well, our sister company. So if anybody's familiar with Glenigan, the planning portal and insights business there, we're now teamed up together and providing better insights for manufacturers as a result of that combined effort. MBS specifically, we've been around for the past 50 years. I'm going to touch a little bit more on this, on what specification is throughout the presentation, but ultimately our customers are your customers. Now, a lot of manufacturers do tend to think that MBS is an architect's sort of specific tool or platform. There are a vast amount of architects that use it, but we're also very widely used by contractors, consultants, engineers, anybody really that's involved in having to write written specifications for projects. So if you'd like to know more about that, again, we're going to showcase some of that throughout this presentation, but one of the team would be happy to chat through with you later on if that's something that you'd like to do. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at the user demand through the MBS platform for MEP Products. We're going to talk a little bit about what is specification, how things have been changing in the industry with it, particularly with some of the legislation changes that we've been going on. We're going to discuss MBS and SIBSI's partnership, which I'll highlight shortly. How you can target specifiers. We're going to look at safety and sustainability considerations. Now, those are obviously the two highest factors that people need to be considering, and the whole premise around why the legislations have been changing so vastly over the past couple of years. We're then going to get a few case studies, one from a consultant and one from a manufacturer. And then I'll go into a live demo and I'll showcase to you how the MBS platform works, how manufacturers' products can be searched, researched, and ultimately added to the specification. So one of the USPs with MBS is that your product, systems, materials, whatever it is that you're marketing, can actually be added directly into the spec through the portal. So yeah, without further ado, let's go. So building service engineering and the specification can be quite complex. Obviously, the building service engineering side of things is the whole piece that makes the building work. The architecture side is obviously absolutely paramount, but without the building service engineers, we wouldn't have the facilities in a usable form that we have today. So it's quite critical that specifications are written for these. It's very important that data is processed and so forth. So on that note, MBS have recently teamed up with SIBSI. We're now SIBSI's endorsed partner for specification and product information. If anybody wants to know a little bit more about that, you can visit sibsi.org, and there's a lot of information on there and also on the mbs.com as well. But what we've got here is just a little testimonial from Simon Parker, the MD at SIBSI. Noting that obviously they're delighted to announce MBS as the official specification partner, and it's the whole premise of it is to lead the way forward for the members and the wider built environment. to bring people, organizations, and data together through technology. And that's exactly what MBS's end game is to make the industry more collaborative through the sharing of information. SIBSI is obviously committed to driving higher standards through the industry. It's the whole reason why they exist, and they're their main driver. So obviously working with MBS, it's going to add that further impetus on raising standards and changing the approach to managing product information. Some of the key pieces there highlighted, so bringing people, organizations, and data together through tech. And higher standards of construction product information. It's what we're about, it's what SIBSI are aiming for, and hopefully between the two of us, it's going to help you guys on your journey as well. So that said, MBS is platforms. We've currently got two products. One's MBS Source, which is the online product search engine, and then we've got MBS Chorus, which is the specification tool that's used by the industry. For any manufacturers listening, it might not be well known to you that MBS has specific M&E credentials within these tools, and we've currently got a large push with the engineering sector to bring highlighting the importance of specification to them. Chorus is absolutely well suited for that, but we've also already got a large customer base that are using it, and we'll see that through some of the case studies later on. So specification, I think the first thing to do before I start talking about what it is just talk about the differences in spec. For a lot of service engineering components, or anything that's mechanical and electrical really, people will be used to specifications being written, and it might say contractor's choice or the subcontractor, etc. Manufacturer might have to decide what's going in. But obviously for many years that's been the case. Now, from a descriptive text, it means that general specifications included, but obviously it's down to the specialist contractor to ultimately make the decisions. Now, whilst that still might be the case moving forward, legislation is obviously changing absolutely massively, whether it's for sustainable means, looking at lower energy buildings, looking at whole life cycle value of the project itself, or whether it's from a safety perspective. Obviously there's a mass amount of work going on in safety as well, from building a safer future right through to the current draft building regulations, etc., that are being changed, and the whole golden thread piece. A big part of this is going to put reliance on the specifier, the main appointed specifier, to actually engage with these manufacturers, subcontractors at earlier stages, which is going to in turn see the descriptive text, the descriptive specs transform to prescriptive ones. Now, a prescriptive spec is the specification that actually includes things such as the materials, the products. It's referencing the manufacturers, the systems, the actual SKUs, that kind of thing. So it's going further to ensure that what's specified initially at the design stage actually transfers through into construction. So everybody is aware from a very early point what the outcome is, what the building's outcome is going to be, but ultimately that can then be managed through. So it's not a surprise to somebody when it comes to assessing the building before handover, and then products have to be checked, or when it is in the in-use phase, people don't necessarily know what's going on, etc. So prescriptive specs becoming more and more prominent, and MBS has seen a really big uptick in this particular area. So through its connected nature, MBS Chorus facilitates the ability to generate prescriptive specs, but it allows people to do this in a collaborative way. Now, by that, what we mean is that the designer, the specifier, the manufacturer, subcontractors can all collaborate in the same tool. Chorus has something called an invite to spec function, and it can actually allow the specifier to give the subcontractor or the manufacturer access to the actual platform, providing they've got the same software, but which is all cloud-based, so there's nothing to download or anything like that, and actually work with them on writing their actual specification for their particular element directly in the native format. MBS itself, we've been around, as I mentioned earlier, for just coming up to 50 years now. We're obviously very well established in the industry. We've got just under 4,000 practices using MBS to write specifications, which is almost, I think, 500,000 seats. So some of these practices, you might have the one-man band that works out of their office at home, but it goes right up to your sort of big multidisciplinary consultancy services that might have 100 software licenses of MBS. Alongside that, we've got over 1,000 manufacturers on MBS Source with hundreds of thousands of products listed. A lot of those are M&E type products. So if it's something that's new to you, we're going to show you that later down the line and show you how it works. But those two things combined results in roughly over 50,000 specifications being created. That's project specifications, not just individual component specs, which would be obviously much, much higher throughout any one year. We've got hundreds of building service engineering companies using the tool to write specifications. Another key bit of info there is obviously we've got 1,200 plus subscribers to the services library. So this is where people can get information on standards, regulations, etc., to actually facilitate a lot of this. So the MBS users, yep, we do have a large architect base of people specifying, but we also have MEP engineers, we have contractors, subcontractors, we also have manufacturers that use the tool to write specifications as a specification writing service to their clients. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, we'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. The service engineering itself obviously crosses many sectors. It could be education, healthcare, leisure, commercial, industrial, obviously residential. Typical sort of residential house might not require a lot of the service engineering things such as lighting controls, for example. A lot of different entities, but if it was high-rise residential building, then obviously them same principles fall in because of the complexity of the nature. So MBS has content, it has specification clauses, data templates that facilitates all of that alongside the guidance for anybody that's writing a project specification in each of those areas. From a manufacturer's point of view, M&E products are something that we obviously promote quite widely as well, whether it's air conditioning, communication, heating and cooling, lighting, transport stuff. If you want to take a look at source, we're going to show you that in a moment, but there's a whole host of information that people can find. So if you are a specifier listening to this webinar today, I'm pretty certain that we'll be able to find a lot of the products or material systems that you're looking for the spec within those tools as well. So really, that's where to start. Where would the specifier look for these types of systems and products? Well, they could go to the manufacturer's individual websites. It's always great to have your own site and your product data listed on there. With the legislation changes that are going, if we look at schemes such as the Code for Construction Product Information, there's been more premise put on getting that structured. So making sure you've got machine readable properties with the relevant attributed data next to it so people can understand what the product's doing, what you're describing, how it's going to perform, the whole information that they require to actually make valid decision on the specification. MBS Source has been built around that premise. So if you're listed in there, we're already taking care of a lot of that. And as I'll show you later down the line, there's ways that you can take your source listings and actually embed those on your own website. So for the specifiers, it's a one-stop shop. It's a single source where they can come and search for hundreds of thousands of different products and find what they need. But importantly, the data is structured, it's clear, it's unambiguous. They can make the decisions that they need to do. But then as an absolute benefit, we've got the data actually structured to the written specification formats, and that can then be dropped straight into the written specification. Source and chorus are interestingly linked, so it's a very seamless flow, which you'll see shortly. So how does specification work? Well, give you a little bit of a brief history on it. MBS was founded back in 1973. The concept actually came around a few years before that. So I think in its concept, we are actually 50 years old now, but the first national building specification, obviously that's what the MBS stands for, was launched in 1973. And top left corner there, you can see it was a series of books that were published, and it had standard data templates, guidance, etc. in it. The reason for this was that there was no standardized specification prior to this, and the industry was pretty much doing whatever it wanted, project by project, which was not good for the client. It was not good for safety. It was not good for efficiency or waste. And if we look at it in today's terms, it clearly wouldn't have been very sustainable. So that's been developed over the years. You can see some of the images there. It was the the book that the architects would have kept on the shelves originally, but then it started to become more widely populated, a bit like the RIBA planner work. It was developed initially for architect use, but became the industry de facto standard, and MBS has been exactly the same thing. It was developed originally for architects, but it's now used by every discipline across the sector. We went through 2 binders, and then floppy disk in the 80s, CD-ROM in the 90s, through most of the early noughties. It was downloadable software, which obviously came with its own IT headaches, installation, license keys, that kind of thing, admin rights if you worked in a reasonable sized business. Obviously the IT people would have to take care of that. But then a couple of years ago, we launched MBS Chorus, which you can see on the screen there. It's the main image from the center to the right. Chorus is completely cloud-based, so all you need is the login, and as long as you've got an internet connection and access to a web browser, Google, whatever, you can actually get onto Chorus. So there's no IT headaches with it anymore. And it's been designed mobile first as well. So for the first time ever with the MBS tools, it works on a mobile, it works on a tablet, works on a Mac, also works on your desktop, on your PC. So wherever you are, whatever device you're on, you could be sat in a coffee shop on your mobile phone, you could be on a tablet on site, or you could be sat in the office at the laptop or at the desktop. You can actually access Chorus and work on the specifications in that live environment. So it's making a lot of use of time. Internationally, we're seeing a lot of uptake in this. So if there's people doing a lot of travel, or they might not be working on a project that's close to where they're based, through the commute and stuff, they'd be able to work on the specifications as well within that downtime. So it's been absolutely fantastic. Through the pandemic in particular, when everybody was forced to work from home, we saw well over 1,000% uptake in the use of MBS Chorus. It's now the only solution that we have, but being cloud-based, it meant that everybody that then was able to work from home, if they got their own laptop, iPad, whatever it was that they got access to, it didn't necessarily have to be the company's machine. A lot of these might have been desktops tied to the office. Through Chorus, it allowed people to log on and actually carry on with the specification work. So been absolutely hugely successful. And if you want to know more about that, as I mentioned earlier, drop us a note. So how does the specification cycle work? We've got this little infograph here on the left-hand side. It's something that MBS's marketing team came up with, and it highlights the planner work around the outside and the relevant colors from 0 conception stage right through to in use at stage 7. And ultimately, the relevant stakeholders that are involved in the decisions use different materials, different information at different stages throughout that whole life. So as a manufacturer, you need to be considering these within your marketing. Initially, stage 1 would be around the awareness phase. So this is where things like MBS Source would come in, where people might be looking for literature, case studies, that kind of thing, influence on systems that might have been used on previous projects that are similar to the ones they're working on. It could be new products that are new to the industry, innovative things that they might be looking at pushing boundaries with the new design. But obviously, CPD is absolutely paramount there. So continual professional developments, MBS facilitate the RIBA CPD. So this is usually where that's going. I mean, if people are looking for CPD material, yeah, people have to do it to remain chartered or achieve certain requirements throughout their professional lives. But ultimately, they tend to get picked when there's a project need for that as well. So it might be that somebody's doing something and they think, actually, we don't necessarily have the expertise in this. They'll reach out to one of the manufacturers that provides CPD to then gain that knowledge. Obviously builds that relationship, and it gets the manufacturer in the door at the early stages. Stage 2, when things start to be developed a little bit more, so it could be the external envelope of the buildings being designed, it could be certain engineering disciplines that are being deployed at that particular point, structure, maybe the MEP sort of things from a pipework perspective. They look at the manufacturer's websites, but they'll also look at MBS Source for this type of information as well. We then go into stage 3, so selection. This is where they will start to define, and when we look back to those prescriptive specifications that we mentioned earlier, what the actual products are, what the criteria are, what the systems are that are going to be written into that specification. So again, MBS Source sits very well here, but then we start to see the development of MBS Chorus really coming into its own as well. So Chorus is the specification writing tool, and obviously that's the key element there to get that specification written. Stage 4 then, technical design stage, the last bit right before construction. The complete end game there is to get the final written specification complete so it can move into the procurement and construction phases. And here MBS Chorus is on its own. There is no product alike for Chorus. It doesn't have any competition in the UK. So if anybody is writing a specification, it will either be done on Chorus or they'll be using something of their own, likely Microsoft Word, which is quite disjointed and comes with a whole host of headaches from keeping up to date with legislations and so forth, and timekeeping. It's just not very efficient. So this is why MBS is so widely used in the industry for that particular reason. Then go into the construction and purchase phase. So the specifications used there. So clearly as a manufacturer, it's making sure that you're building up that awareness, those stages 1, 2, 3, and 4 to aid the actual transition to a sale at stage 5. And then lastly, in the final stages, we're looking at re-engagement. So that information can be captured in CRM. You'll have facilities managers, particularly with the implementation of things like BIM. That data is going to be used throughout the whole life cycle. So when it comes to maintenance, or if it comes down to replacing products and systems, then we'll have this data log of what's gone into the building, and ultimately it'll end in potential return communication with yourselves, and hopefully return business as well for replacements there. There's a lot of outside factors affecting specification, and I've touched on this very, very briefly earlier, but it's the 2 S's, safety and sustainability, are the key drivers. From a safety point of view, obviously fire safety has been absolutely top of the list when it comes to media coverage over the past few years, but also through Parliament, and very, very rightly so. Dame Judith Hackett was commissioned to publish the Building a Safer Future, the inquiry following Grenfell back in 2017. That has resulted in a lot of changes. We've now got the draft Building Safety Bill that's going through Parliament and will be the Building Safety Act. And the outcome from there, as well as obviously a lot of changes to product regulations, as well as other building regulations. So if you're not aware of that, there's currently the draft building product regulations available to view at .gov.uk. Highly recommend taking a look at that. It covers a lot of different things, from how data should be surfaced right through to even sustainability as well. So it is not just focusing on the safety, it's looking at the whole wider picture and what's needed and where the gaps are at the moment with the current regulations. So big seismic shift there, and it is putting a lot of premise on manufacturers to up their game. MBS can help you with this, so if you again want to know more, drop us a note, but some guidance there is actually available on the government website. Sustainability, it's obviously very, very, very important that we do this. We've all just witnessed the media coverage from COP26. We need to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. The construction sector is responsible for roughly 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions, or the built environment, should I say. It includes operating the homes that we live in. So we need to do more as a sector. There's a lot of schemes that have been around for a while. If we look at the Climate Change Act from 2008, or the Paris Agreement, there's then been developments from relevant industry leaders, such as the RIBA 2030 Climate Challenge, for example, right through to people just ultimately wanting to do a better job. The EU taxonomy comes into force in January, which is going to put legislation on people to deliver more sustainably, but also around the whole reporting piece, there's going to be changes there as well. And the outcomes from COP26, Rishi Sunak noted on midweek of that session that the first week that all listed businesses are going to have to produce a net zero roadmap for 2023, which is going to dictate how they're going to achieve net zero come 2050, aligned to the Paris Agreement. MBS ran a webinar few weeks back now, entitled How to Become a Sustainable Business. It's something that we've been focusing on very, very heavily as a company, and something that we feel is very important. So we've actually measured our own carbon emissions for 2019 and 2020, and we've almost completed those for 2021, which will be done once the year's ended. And that's for our scope 1 and 2 emissions, and also scope 3, which covers a very, very broad aspect of carbon measurements, all aligned to the greenhouse gas protocol. But we've then invested heavily in carbon offsetting and joined the Climate Neutral Now scheme with the UN. So we've actually pledged to the United Nations, and we're listed on their website to demonstrate what it is that we're doing. That's been tackled at group level as well, so it's coming right from the top down. And if you're looking at measuring your own carbon emissions, just remember that it's not just your products, the sustainability of your products and how they perform, it's also how you conduct your business as well that people are going to be looking at and using to make those decisions. So embodied carbon in your products, for example, will be impacted by your operational carbon. So there's a lot to factor in there, but ultimately those two things are impacting specification decisions. The specifiers need to ensure that they're specifying safely, and ultimately they have to ensure that they're specifying more sustainably as well to meet a lot of the changes. So how can you help specifiers with all that said? So I think the first thing is ensuring that your product's digital, that your product information is digital even. So whether that's available on your own website, if you're using a third party like MBS Source, make sure that it's there for people to access, they can use it, and it can be transferred from one package to the next with relative ease. I think another thing to mention is BIM. A lot of manufacturers have maybe not sort of seen the returns with BIM content that they might have hoped for, but really it's all in the data. From a safety perspective, the geometry is obviously going to help. From a sustainability perspective, it can help as well. There's a lot of tools that people don't realize within the design software that can control and dictate the passive measures of a building, but also things like spatial planning, etc. Safety clearance zones can all be factored into the 3D geometry, but ultimately the data that goes into that can be used throughout that whole project lifecycle. The golden thread, the BIM process, is something that's widely pushed there. So again, MBS, we've run the National BIM Library for the past 11 years. It's now integrated into MBS Source, and if you want to know a bit more about BIM, again, we'd be more than happy to give you some advice on that. The next thing is third-party certification. So especially when it comes to safety and sustainability, ensuring that what you're claiming your product systems do or what you are doing as a business is accurate. Can't be validated any more than if you've got third-party accreditation from independent. So that's a lot of things that people are looking for. There's a lot of schemes out there, such as the Code for Construction Product Information, which is focusing on safety, or the CMA's Green Claims Guide, which is looking at tackling greenwashing, that's asking manufacturers to consider third-party certification to demonstrate that their products are actually as safe and as sustainable as they're claiming them to be. Promote the life cycle value. So a lot of people will focus on things, particularly with M&E type products, and especially in the electrical side of, oh, it's low energy consumption, it's got a longevity of this, but look at the whole, how long does it last for? What can be done with it when it's not usable anymore? How can it be recycled? The whole circular economy piece there. It might be that you have a more expensive product than most of your competitors, but if it lasts 10 times longer, specifiers are now looking at the whole life cycle value of the projects, getting the clients, the contractors, etc., involved at much earlier stages to make sure that the outcomes are delivering to the needs that the sustainable community needs. So yeah, there's a lot that can be done there. And BIM content, I mentioned, this could be data, but it could also be 3D geometry as well. MBS have got a full team of in-house specialists with regards to BIM. So drop us a line if you want to know a bit more about that, and we can talk you through it. Now I'm going to look at a few case studies. The first one is just a slide that we can see here, but then we're going to look at a video in a moment. So this one's from Hydrock. Hydrock are a consultancy that use MBS for their specification purposes. There's a few examples of the projects that they've been working on there. And there's a little quote here from Anaran, who's the Director of Building Performance Engineering there at Hydrock, and noting that one of the main tasks that they had last year, so initial pandemic year, was to standardize specifications and projects. They decided to use MBS Chorus for that. And it was the automatic updates to the standards and the guidance, which we're going to see in the demonstration in a little while, that took away a massive amount of work for them. So what MBS is doing is we're actually making the specifier's job a lot easier, a lot faster, which is one of the main draws for it. But ultimately, if you are listing your products then within that platform, there's a higher potential that you're going to be used within those project templates as well. So there was a load of different things there. You can visit the mbs.com. We've got a resources page. There's a lot more that Anurag had to say on that note, but we've also got case studies from a lot of other different businesses as well if you wanted to take a look. We're now going to hear from Stelrad, who are one of our manufacturer customers. This is a pre-recording, but it gives insight as to what Stelrad are doing, why they're using MBS, which MBS functions that they are using and seeing the most benefit from. And hopefully it'll give you some insight as to how this might be able to help you as well. So over to Stelrad.
Hello, my name is Chris Harvey. I'm Head of Marketing for Stelrad UK and Ireland. I would like to take you through a few slides to introduce Stelrad, how we work with specifiers, the MBS and the importance of specification when designing complex systems such as heating systems. First of all, I'd like to share with you the Stelrad Radiator Group. Stelrad Radiator Group head office is located in Newcastle, with the manufacturing base for UK and Ireland in Mexborough, South Yorkshire. And Stelrad Radiator Group is the #1 brand in these two regions. We then have 2 other manufacturing sites in Holland and Turkey, and a regional office in Belgium. So, how Stelrad works with specifiers. Our aim is to help you deliver superior environmental solutions that optimize building performance. To make specifying Stelrad easy, we have had to adapt in how we offer you our products and services. We have always offered a package of tools, support, products, and innovation that only Stelrad can deliver. However, as the specification world continues to evolve as we move into a digital way of working, and so have we. We continue to offer the same tools as we always have, but it's now even easier to specify Stelrad radiators with MBS. You can see on this slide, the words in black is what we've done traditionally, and the words, phrases in red are new for the digital world. So, Stelrad and MBS Source. MBS Source allows us to deliver suitable radiator options with all the necessary product data within a few clicks, which has been presented by Stephen. Integrating seamlessly into your project workflow and providing an additional level of enhanced product data in a consistent, structured format. You can select the radiators by aesthetics and compare the features easily, including heat outputs on this platform. Stelrad and MBS Chorus. You will find Stelrad radiators on MBS Chorus easy to specify as part of the heating system. Dead simply, select Stelrad and one click you at the full product range, and another click into the product detail. Just as a point of interest, a case study that I'm talking about now is Stelrad radiators was selected at the MBS headquarters in Newcastle. You can see that using Chorus, the radiators were added along with all the relevant product details. Looking at a bit of in-depth, the conversations between the architect, interior designer, and engineers concluded that the Caliente vertical doubles would be an ideal choice for the 2 main floors of the new building. And you can see on this slide the specification page and drawings. Here is a picture of the final office with the radiators installed, and they are highlighted with the red arrow. So finally, with myself, the benefits of specifying Stellar within MBS. When determining how to keep a building warm, it's important to make sure that products are chosen or fit for the job as well as look good when installed. We believe the MBS platform simplifies the process of choosing radiators based on 4 principles. The first, appearance. We can show you the full Stellar portfolio from steel panel, designer, verticals, colored, and special application radiators to suit your preference for your project. Second, shapes, sizes, and heat. The most extensive range in the UK can be found with product details, and then you can compare specification preferences based on which radiators are capable of heating a room. Third, heating system. All Stellar radiators correctly sized will ensure heating the building in the most efficient and compatible with a traditional gas cylinder heating system or a low temperature system. And finally, information, which is one of the most important, I believe, for MBS, is being clear and concise and containing all the information. It saves the project team time, the client and the contractor time and money by providing answers to many of the on-site construction questions. Thank you for your time.
So hopefully you found those 2 case studies useful. I think the fact that Stellar are using Source and Chorus combined just shows how powerful that can be. So yeah, it's really, really great when we've got such fantastic testimonials from both sides of the customer base, whether it's the specifiers or the manufacturers. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot more on the mbs.com if you wanted to take a look at some of those. So specifying with MBS, I'm going to move straight into a demo and show you how the platform works. So what we've got here is MBS Source. As I mentioned earlier, MBS has 2 products. We've got Source, which is the online search engine that you can see here, and we have MBS Chorus, which is the specification writing platform. I'm going to start in Source, and I'm just going to show you a little bit about what this is and what it does. So we're on the landing page. It's source.thembs.com. The whole premise around this is allow people to find, select, and specify the products. There's a lot of relevant ways that you could list your product information on your own site. There are other third parties, but there is only MBS that can actually connect that directly into the specification, which we'll see in a moment through the Chorus functionality. This product actually aligned what was some historic products through MBS and the RIBA. So the National BIM Library, MEP Products Select-It, and MBS Plus is now all rolled into this one package. There's place there for sort of promoted manufacturers, featured case studies, featured products we can list on there as well, but then a load of helpful information at the bottom, how MBS can help you, testimonials, what certain customers are saying. And then right at the very bottom, we've got some relevant links. So if you're looking at creating BIM content, for example, we've got a load of free-to-use tools there that people can actually download and use. And then relevant information, contact info, social media, the whole sort of standard expectation that you would get with a decent website. But Source itself, the whole reason for this is for people to research products, projects, materials, systems. So we can search by category. We could search by manufacturer. We could search generically within the bar there, which tends to be what most people do. We can also log into this now. The great thing with this is that the specifier can actually save projects. So you can see that straight away I can jump into my projects. I can save favorites with my selections and reuse those time and time again in different projects as well. But just as a basic example, if we were going to look for something, so let's say, I don't know, lighting controls, we can hit the search button. It's brought in 466 results for that type of product. We can then use the filters to start to filter these down. So if we look at centralized lighting controllers, let's click on the link. You can see that it's then narrowed that result down to the 5. So we can take a look at one of these. I'll just click on any to begin with, and this is typically what MBS would show. So we've got the product listing, a nice image of it. We can jump down to specific things. So the application, digital objects. In this particular case, this manufacturer's got Revit content for their information. We've got phone numbers, web address, which will direct the user directly to that manufacturer's website. They can contact the manufacturer directly through the platform there as well. Or we can jump to the home page. Description of the information. Classification. Now this is really, really important. So a lot of manufacturers will be used to the old common arrangement to work sections. MBS do still classify products to that. There are still a lot of people that would use these things. This might be something like for paneling. It could be the K32 spec, anything along those lines that you're used to, H10 and so forth. But Uniclass was launched, and it's this code here that we're looking at back in 2015. When the government were looking to mandate BIM, and the BIM mandation came in 2016, which was then referred to as level 2 BIM, the whole premise around that was to allow the government better asset management control. So they were looking at capturing the data throughout the specification, throughout the design and construction phases, to then pass that over to be used for facilities management and maintenance in the long run. There's a lot of factors, figures around. For every pound in design, it costs £10 in construction, costs £1,000 in use, or £100 in use, depending on what research paper you look at. That does vary, but the thing is that they all have a common theme, is that for every amount spent at the design stage could really, really save an immense amount of money when it gets to the in-use phase. So for something like a hospital or a school, university, something where the actual maintenance of this is going to be daily, it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, potentially a week or maybe a month. It's very, very critical that clients such as the NHS or Department for Education, whoever it is that are looking at these things, are getting the whole life cycle value considered at the design stage to keep the costs down when it gets to the in-use phase. Now, BIM needed something to manage that level 2 thing through, and MBS were appointed by the government to develop something called the BIM toolkit, which allowed people to manage projects to level 2 requirements through a platform online. The toolkit's still available. You can go and look at that. It's toolkit.thembs.com, I think the web address for it is. But what was quickly realized when this was all being developed was that the old common arrangement to work section specs didn't really lend themselves to that digitalization very well. So Uniclass was appointed. It's now very, very widely used. The recent MBS digital construction survey noted it was about 70% of the industry using it. Across all the specifications that are written on a daily basis in the MBS platform, it's about 50-50 with cause. Obviously, the industry being what it is, there are a lot of people that are slow to adopt change, but anything that's a BIM project should be using Uniclass, but also projects that aren't BIM are using it now too. The UK BIM framework, so the British standard annex of ISO 19650, it's part 2, I think, in particular, actually states that it should be Uniclass 2015 that's being used if it's a BIM project for classification. So anything that we list will classify to that, and it allows all that data sharing to happen throughout the project. I'm going to take a look at a different manufacturer now, and I'm just going to show you, I think it's Amber Kelly that we were going to look at. So Amber Kelly, the reason I'm showing you these is that they actually subscribe to basically everything that MBS has as a service. So it gives me a great demonstration to show you what it would look like with the full suite of products listed on your page. So they've got the overview of the business here, information about what the company does. They actually make riser safe equipment, so where services, MEP services are going through the core in buildings, actually blanks those off, and they're removable for maintenance and things like that. So it ties in very well to this particular product category. They provide CPD, so if we click on that, if I was a specifier, it would take me directly to Amber Kelly's CPD page, and I could book CPDs directly with them there. So great bit of promotion from a CPD point of view. But we can then look at their products. We can see that we can look at these. We can check some of the information. Now, they've only got the one riser safe product listed, but it does have multiple options. So you can see that there's different types of fitting that are available in here. Now, we've got a lot of information in this particular case from the application, shows where it can be used, the different fitments that they have. So depending on whether it's going in a composite deck or if it's in a precast slab, that kind of thing. How it can be used or even retrofitted, down through to the description, corrosion protection, general features and benefits. Most manufacturers will want to list these. So this could be things like your key highlighted points that you want to promote as a marketing perspective to the specifier. Down to the general information. Now, this is the bit that allows people to filter ultimately. So when we were looking at those filters on the left-hand side, in the same way as, I don't know, Amazon or Auto Trader would work, it's allowing people to filter by specific credentials. We've then got the uniclass codes, and you can see here that because this is quite a universal product, it actually sits within multiple classifications. That's something that we can do. Your product doesn't have to be narrowed down to one classification. So if you're listing, you can work with us on that, and we'll work with you to make sure that you sat within the relevant categories to aid the specification. We dual classified this, so it's classified to Uniclass 2015 and cores. Again, for anybody that wants to list these products, we will do that. And then we get down to the specification data. So you can see here what we've got is the template. So on the left-hand side, we've got the properties, and the right-hand side, we've got the attributes. So aligning to the ISO 23386 and 23387 series, the digitalization aspects of things like the code for construction product information, the new legislation changes that are coming in. MBS source already provides machine readable information, and it's in a nice, clear, structured, unambiguous format that allows the specifier to make better decisions, but ultimately the manufacturer can communicate that in a really clean and structured way. This particular template is for this particular product. So obviously being around for 50 years, we've got a vast amount of product data templates. Doesn't matter whether it's a roofing tile, whether it's a lighting control unit, a window, toilet, carpet, air conditioning, alarm system, you name it, we'll have a product data template or a system template for each. The system templates, which I'll show you in a moment, actually break down into the relevant component products as well. So we've got it covered. Whatever you need, there'll be stuff in there. So you can see here that we've got the frame listed there, and they've got different ones. So if I was going to fit into the retro flat pack, you can see that the data changes within the listing there to suit that. So it's very easy for the specifier to make the decision. Going one step further, there's things like fire safety information. So this is classified to EN 13501. And it's A1 rated with S1 for smoke and 0 for flaming droplets. So the user knows that that's going to be as best as they can get when it comes to fire safe products. They've even gone to the degree of actually putting on that it was tested to 1,000 degrees for 90 minutes. And then even more so environmental information. Now, MBS are pushing manufacturers to list environmental credentials. It's a slow process, if I'm honest. The amount of manufacturers that don't have the information to provide to us to begin with, or are slow to give us the information, is a little bit frustrating. But we are pushing for this. The specifiers are absolutely screaming for it. And what we've got here is an example of some of the data template that's been filled in. Ambercali have done quite a good job of this. They've got the country material origin, so the steel's sourced from the UK, it's manufactured in the UK, and they've actually done a cradle to grave assessment on that, and there would have been some offsetting, etc., gone in to make this product carbon neutral. And ultimately 98% of the product is recyclable at its end of life. So obviously steel's quite easy to do from a recycling point of view, but if you've got other products, this is the kind of information that people are looking for. We can add embodied carbon in there. We can add lists for red list materials. So if you've got volatile organic compounds, anything relating to sustainability credentials, we can add into this. The great thing at the moment is there's an opportunity there for a lot of manufacturers. As I mentioned earlier about it being slow to gain the information from most manufacturers, if you can list this and you've got competitors that are listing their products that haven't got that, it's going to stand you apart from the competition. So highly recommend that, and really it's going to be demanded moving forward, where if you can get on it early doors, it's going to give you that early foot in the door. We then got literature, case studies. This could be certificates, installation manuals, catalogs, you name it, all of that information is actually listed within there. But I'll just jump back into their particular listing. Third-party certifications are listed, so going back to that verification, they're actually doing this as well. So this is a really, really great example of somebody that's actually gone to the nth degree and worked with MBS to make sure that the listing's spot on. Case studies, there's a whole host of different ones there, some places that you'll probably recognize, and where the products have been used. Absolutely great for specifiers to show that those products here are suitable for the project that they're working on. Literature, again, could be things like catalogs, product data sheets, EPDs, certificates, you name it, it's not in there. And then straight through to the About Us. We've got contacts. You can see here that we've got a primary contact. So again, that aligns to the code for construction product information. We've then got secondary contacts that are down there, tertiary. You can control all of this in the background within the partner platform, which I'll also show you in a moment to show how you can maintain your contact information. So absolutely great example there, but what you really want to know is how that connects to the specification. So if we have a look at this product, you can see that we've got this little add to spec button there. Now that's actually available within the specification tool as well. So if we were going down here, we were looking at these particular products, so modular riser floor units, that might be something that we're going to write in the spec. So what we've got here is chorus. You can see that I've got a load of different projects that I've been working on listed in there, very typical of what the specifier would see. But I'm just going to, in a bit of a Blue Peter style, look on, here's one I made earlier. It's just a demo project that I've made up. Added the credentials in, and we're going to write a specification for it. So this might be services spec. We'd then pick the content set. You can see here that we've got a lot of international content as well, but I'm going to pick Uniclass in this particular example just for the demonstration purposes. It's then asking us to look for some information. So what do we want to include? So back to source, I'm just going to show you how the data links. What we're going to do is add this particular product in. So it was modular riser floor units that we're going to look in there. So if I search for this modular riser floor, I don't need to put the whole thing in, I can just hit the search button. And the search engine optimization in Chorus, we use keywords as well as the typical SEO things like Google would use to surface rankings. You can see that we've actually got that right at the top, but what it's done is taken what I've written there. So if there's spelling mistakes, if you've used terminology or something, it will actually bring in other suggestions as well, just to make sure that you're covered. But in this particular case, it was that was the one that we wanted. Now, what I will note just before we jump in this is you can see that some of these codes are SS, some are PR. So this is a product and that's a system. That dry riser system will actually be made of specific products. So underneath that SS code is a family tree of PR codes. So you could create the specification for a system. You would add the relevant bits in for the component parts, and then they would be completed separately as well. So looking at the golden thread and trying to control things at asset information level. We had a great example from Alan Q that did a case study on this and presented at MBS's construction leaders back in February last year. They're doing this now, and it's proving absolutely sort of paramount in making sure that their residential properties, particularly across the cities where they're high rise, etc., are maintained as well as they possibly can be and as safe as they possibly can be. So Uniclass allows that to be done, and it allows people to look at information and see what's within a building without having to actually drill down into the finite detail. So we've just selected this then, and this is where the template would be. So when I mentioned about those templates earlier, you can see that we've got the relevant template for a modular riser floor unit. We've got plate, frame, etc. Obviously, if this was something, I don't know, completely random like a wash basin, you wouldn't have these particular fields, and it would be specific to its own area. So this might be riser, capping or something, I don't know, whatever the specifier would call it as they were putting that in. Now this is really where MBS comes into its own. So you can see straight away that I have clicked in the manufacturer button. Now the specifier could choose to go and fill all of that in if they want to, but because we've actually got the products in MBS source, it's now linked into Chorus. So you can see all of this information for that Amber Cali product there is actually now within MBS Chorus. So we can go and we can take a look at that. We can look at the application. You can see where it's going to be used. We can look at the variations within the clause and so forth. Once we've decided that that's the product that we want, it's just a case of hitting add spec. It drops that product into the specification. You can see it's now auto-populated that manufacturer's details, the product name, contact information is all in there. Anything that's an option is available then to select. So it might be that we're doing a retrofit here. So we need to flat pack because it's going into an existing building that's being refurbished. We can then start to look and pick things like accessories. Do we want to soak a plate? Yeah, maybe to go around the pipework and so forth. Once that's done, you hit the save button and that product's now added to the spec. Now, Amber Cali will be notified of that. And how that works is that in the partner platform, within the MBS platform, we actually have analytics. So I can show you some examples of this. I'm looking at a fake MBS account here, so there's nothing untoward that I can show you. Not going to cover any sort of manufacturer's GDPR contradictions. So you can see that the information here, it tells you how many times you've been added to project specifications throughout a certain period. It's completely configurable. We can go down and look at your most downloaded literature, most outbound clicks. So where we say we directing traffic to your own website, that could be the case. Relevant countries that they're being downloaded in, so forth. But then drilling down a little bit more, looking at the products. So 16 products have been added to specifications. And you can see here that we've got the name of the particular component, the practice name, the project, where it is, the date. Obviously, this is a sort of fake account, so there's not a great deal of information in there because we aren't getting the specifiers downloading generic MBS stuff. They want the actual manufacturer's products. But yeah, there's a lot of information there that your sales teams could use as leads to help build that relationship early doors. Same thing for literature. If you've been an MBS account holder for a while, this is quite a new platform, so the legacy analytics are sort of accessed through here as well if you want to look at some of the historic stuff. But for things like BIM content, it'll tell you how many times your product's been downloaded, what the practice was, where they are. Or if it's done using the MBS plugin, Chorus plugs into Revit as well, ArchiCAD and Vectorworks. It'll tell you how many times a product's been placed. So it could be that this rise has been downloaded once and put into the project, but if it's an 18-story building, it might have 18 or even more versions of it added in, and it'll give you the quantification. So looking at project value, it'll give you that information as well. But then I think the last thing I want to touch on is the web integration. So what we have here is the ability to set up your product pages to your own brand identity. So your colors, fonts, logos, that kind of thing can all be configured within here. And then what this can then do is generate an embedded code, which will allow you to host this on your own website. And I've got an example of a manufacturer that's done this here. Now, it's not strictly an M&E product, but they've done a great job, which is why I wanted to show you. This is Cooper's Fire. And we've got an active fire curtain. Now you can see straight away that they've got that add to spec button. This is their own website. We're not an MBS anymore. But all of that data that's structured, their website's now meeting all of those requirements that the industry is expecting. And it's just taken directly from MBS source. So MBS have done the hard work in structuring the information for them, making all of that digital, and then allowed them to actually create the product listing on their own website to run this. So if we take a look at their Uniclass reference, you can see there it's a vertical active fire curtain barrier. What we can do with that is now directly from the manufacturer's site. So we can click that add to spec button there. Now if we go back into the specification, we want to add some more content in. And we're going to look for an active fire curtain now. You can see that we've got vertical active fire curtains, which is what I think that particular product was. Yep. we can go back into the content, we can pick this one, and then we can actually go into the template. If I just hit Control V within this, it's taken that information directly from the manufacturer's site. I can check that, just validate it's okay, and then I can click add product, and straight away it's added that manufacturer's content directly from their own website into the specification in the relevant format. Another thing that this can do is if we're in the project itself, we've actually got thing called team members. So looking at that collaboration piece, this is where the specifier could invite you as the manufacturer to come in and write your part of the specification. Really easy to do. They can just type in your email address. They can give you contribution rights. So in this particular demo, we've only got one spec, but imagine we'd got roofing, sanitary ware, everything else that was in there, flooring, finishes, and so forth. As an M&E manufacturer, you might have any input in those. So those particular specs that you've not got requirement for, they can just exclude you and just give you access to the one that you need. Completely safe. It needs to be checked by the specifier when it comes back in, but the important thing is that it's then already in the format that they're using. They haven't got to take that Word document or a PDF document that you've generated for them and retype it in manually. It's all there. It's all inherent and in the relevant format. So hopefully you found that demonstration useful. The MBS platform is really, really powerful. Pretty much every manufacturer I've worked for through my career before joining MBS was an MBS customer, and it's been invaluable getting the specifications to ensure that the products were, one, suitable for their application, more importantly than anything, but secondly, from a business perspective, making sure that we got that relationship moving forward, and ultimately resulted in winning projects, particularly the larger ones as well, where there would be thousands of different components added in. It was invaluable tool. So just to wrap up and summarize then within that, key takeaways from the session. To get specified, you need to engage with the engineers early through things like BIM contents, but also quality specification data and your own structured product information. Products are in demand. MBS can help by getting your product in front of hundreds of engineers, thousands of specifiers through the MBS Source and Chorus platform. If you'd like to know more about that, the contact details will be on the next slide, but hopefully the demonstration showcased how easy it is for that to be done and why it's being used so widely. And then last but not least, your product safety and sustainability credentials are high on the specifier's agenda, so make them known. And obviously it goes without saying that make sure it's digital and it's easy for people to access these. It's all well and good having a massive amount of information, but if that's going to then be physically requested, it actually acts more as a blocker than what some people might see as a lead. So get it out there, get it listed, but make sure it's clear and it's structured, and importantly it's in that digital format, and you should be stood in a good stead to move forward. So next steps, if you want to know more, visit the mbs.com/manufacturers. Telephone numbers there, or you could drop us a note at manufacturers@thembs.com. We've got a load of different things that we could offer. Obviously, we'd love to talk to you about getting the products listed within the platform, but we'd be happy to chat about the aspects that are driving changes to spec, what specifiers are looking for, but give you an overview of BIM. So if you want a one-to-one demo, drop a note to the manufacturers there and one of the team will give you a call back. You can also follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter at thembs.com. The Twitter handles there is at the MBS. So yeah, hopefully we found that useful and we'd look forward to hearing from you. I'd like to wish you all a great day and see you soon. Thank you very much.